He hacked at the remaining dry creepers, haste rendering his strokes imprecise, costing him time despite his best efforts to find focus. He freed his feet at last and hauled himself out of the stinking mud into an unsteady standing position. His lungs were heaving, partly from exertion, partly from panic at the thought of where he was, of what they had done to him, dumped him in a den. Half-chewed reeds clung to his clothes and his skin, coating him in their stink. His right foot had been resting against a knee-high pile of droppings, which had burnt through the sole of his boot, and he'd just stepped back onto a skull of some kind, which caved in beneath his heel. Many more bones festooned the area, most of them picked clean. The majority of them came from small jungle creatures, but more than a few were distinctly human. The fact that the den was empty came as small comfort. Lorenzo's eyes searched the trees for a spark of intelligence, a shuffle of movement, any sign of its occupant's return. Why wasn't he dead? Don't question it, he told himself. Your one chance now is to run, to pray you are faster than it is, because it is certainly stronger, more cunning, more vicious than you are. But which way? Can't see it, can't sense it. Where is it waiting? He couldn't believe this was happening, couldn't believe he had been left like this, at the mercy of a monster. The most deadly of predators, on this most deadly of worlds. Greetings friends and welcome to Catachan. I'm Lorcan and this is OnlyWar. If you're new to the channel, thank you for being here, and I hope I earn your subscription today. In the vast emptiness of space, the planet below glistens like an inviting emerald jewel, a tiny speck of abundant and verdant life, beautiful and inviting. But as humanity has found so often in its exploration and expansion across the stars, appearances can be very deceptive. This world, first discovered and colonized in the long-distant past, well before the rise of the Emperor and the establishment of the Imperium of Man, is one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. A planet where the entire ecosystem reacts aggressively to the presence of any alien life form that attempts to gain a foothold on its lush tropical surface. This is the very epitome of a death world. This is Catachan. When humanity set out to colonize the stars during the great expansion of the dark age of technology, those pioneers whose massive spacecraft made the one-way journey to the world that would be named Catachan in the western portion of the Ultima Segmentum must have thought themselves fortunate compared to many. Below them lay what appeared to their exploratory probes to be a calm green orb with a single globe straddling tropical forest biome and a warm but manageable 30 degrees Celsius that varied little with latitude or the seasons. However, once the massive colony ship had made its descent from orbit and landed on the surface, the pioneers that awoke from their cryogenic stasis soon discovered that the apparently tranquil planet was in fact home to one of the most hostile planetary ecosystems in the known universe. These first settlers found themselves besieged immediately by all manner of biological hazards, as the jungle around them reacted to their presence. The structures they built were rapidly covered with lichens that secreted corrosive chemicals. Any areas they cleared were quickly revegetated with strangling vines, and their scouting parties fell victim to virulent diseases and the constant predations of both the flora and fauna of the planet. Soon they were driven back, forced to shelter in the wreckage of their colony ship, while they attempted to find a way to learn to survive on a world where even the vegetation seemed to orient itself against them and react aggressively to their presence, much like an extreme immune response. Countless of their number succumbed to Catachan's many hazards, and much like what would have happened to the organisms around them in their evolutionary past, this extreme natural selection soon meant only those best able to adapt survived. Only the hardiest, quickest, and luckiest were soon left. Over the millennia that followed, these incredibly hardy individuals would eventually gain enough knowledge of their new homeworld to be able to construct a few limited settlements, but these would be isolated fortresses designed to defend against the jungle itself and surrounded with a scorched no man's land where flamers and other extreme methods are required to keep the jungle from reclaiming them within a matter of days. Even so, these mighty fortresses are only temporary and must be constantly rebuilt in new areas as the jungle's crushing vines and insidious corrosive lichen will not be denied, and the fauna in the area increase in number until the human settlers are driven out by their constant attacks. Life under such conditions would lead to Catachan's greatest contribution to the Imperium, quite possibly the hardiest humans in the galaxy, the Catachan jungle fighter regiments of the Astra Militarum. When the infant mortality rate is 50%, and a further half of these fail to survive past the age of 10 solar years, those that do make it to adulthood are without doubt some of the toughest men and women the Emperor can call upon. Should Holy Terror ever fall, it would not surprise many if Catachan became one of humanity's last bastions. A short head start was all he'd been given, a chance of survival, but a slim one. He couldn't fight it, he couldn't imagine doing such a thing, and if it came to it, he would certainly need more weapons than he had to even try. Nor could he outpace it, not while he was following his tormentor's two faint footprints. All he could do was wait for it. Wait for the devil. Watch for it in every shadow. Listen for it in every second. Wait for the devil, and hope to be better prepared for its attack than his predecessor had been. The last man to take Creek's test, to travel this route. The man whose pain-contorted corpse would remain a vivid image in the space behind Lorenzo's eyelids for some time to come. It was almost a relief when the waiting ended, and the terror struck. It is right to start our discussion with the most famous predator of this sweltering green hell, a creature whose name is worn by certain Catachan regiments with pride, and who plays a role in many of their often deadly initiation rituals. Catachanus Scorpionis Maximus, the Catachan Devil. These great arachnids resemble a cross between a scorpion and a centipede, but on a much larger scale than either of those ever achieved on ancient Terra, with some mature specimens believed to grow to 100 feet in length. Its long segmented body is covered with a carapace that can easily deflect blade or las fire, each partition carrying a pair of segmented legs that can propel the devil forward at surprising speed when necessary. Although the Catachan Devil does not rely on simply outpacing its prey, it is a tenacious and cunning predator, capable of moving its bulky armoured body with unerring stealth through the dense forest, barely disturbing the vegetation as it stalks its prey relentlessly. Its body terminates in a long barbed tail that carries a lethal toxin, so if being punctured by the barb isn't enough to cause death, the toxin will soon finish the job. As males of the species mature, they develop a pair of claws much like those of a scorpion, on the upper segment just before the armoured head. These sharp claws are easily capable of slicing through armour, flesh, and bone, or pinning its prey with crushing force so they can be impaled on the tail barb. These males are sometimes called fiddlers in Catachan slang, perhaps a reference to the crabs once found near Terra's long-lost oceans. While the mouth of the Catachan devil is relatively small and innocuous compared to its other, more obvious offensive weaponry, its extendable mandibles are bony hooks encircled by venomous tentacles that can cause paralysis on their own. It is believed that Catachan devils can be found in small family groups, although the males are highly territorial and will not tolerate another male entering their hunting grounds. They live in nesting dens where they care for their young, known as devil spawn, which, while smaller, are still incredibly dangerous and capable of burrowing through the thin tropical soil to launch ambush attacks on their prey. While the Catachan devil is capable of great stealth despite its bulk, the next creature takes camouflage to a whole new level. Catachanus phytoparasiticus, the Catachan face eater. Face eaters are gelatinous fauna that position themselves overhanging jungle tracks or water sources where prey animals tend to pass. They usually resemble a large pallid leaf or a thin bracket of fungus, but can adopt a number of forms to hide their presence. Their slow metabolic processes mean they can wait for months or even years until a suitable victim happens upon them. Once the prey creature comes within range, they will drop on their unfortunate victim, and are even capable of propelling themselves with surprisingly powerful musculature hidden within their jelly-like structure. As the name suggests, the aim of the face eater is to attach to the head of its victim, and its amorphous body quickly envelops the victim's face, blocking the airways to suffocate them as they simultaneously secrete powerful digestive enzymes to literally strip the flesh from the face of the victim. The aim of the face eater is not only to feed but also to reproduce, as once the victim is asphyxiated by its gelatinous body, the face eater proceeds to lay a clutch of eggs in its victim, which rapidly hatch into maggot-like larvae that feast on the remains of their parents' kill. It is not surprising that due to their camouflage nature, the face eater has managed to hitch rides off-world to cause problems elsewhere in the Imperium. But maybe more surprising was the intentional decision to import them to the hive world of Necromunda and release them into the heating vents. This was an effort to control the vermin and nefarious gangers using the networks of pipes to navigate the hive unseen. Needless to say, the face eaters soon became the much bigger threat, and an extensive eradication program was required, which at least meant the predatory organisms are now restricted to the underhive. Not all the fauna of Catachan is a vicious predator. In fact, one of the most dangerous creatures, capable of destroying whole settlements, is extremely timid. Unfortunately, evolving in such a hostile ecosystem, this small amphibian has developed an extreme defensive response that is easily triggered accidentally. It is possibly the most poisonous creature in the known universe, Catachanus buffus moribundus, the great barking toad. This relatively small and deceptively fragile-looking amphibian is easily missed, but if disturbed by an unwary footfall, It releases a combination of biochemicals within its own body that cause it to explode in catastrophic fashion. The poison cloud released in this explosion will turn nearly all living tissue in a wide vicinity into glutinous brown slime. Even a small specimen can have a blast radius of 100 meters, with larger specimens causing much greater devastation. No vegetation will grow in the jungle clearings made by the poisonous gas cloud, and more than one fortified settlement on Catachan has been wiped out when an unlucky inhabitant has inadvertently triggered one of these timorous creatures. While negotiating the dense jungle of Catachan, and being aware of the many threats caused by its fauna, the deadliness of the dense vegetation itself can often be overlooked. Many a visitor to Catachan has fallen prey not to the predations of a Catachan devil, or the infamous Chensu of Catachan legend, nor the volatile explosiveness of the great barking toad. A misstep on Catachan, a failure to recognize the deadliness of the flora, has often been the downfall of the unwary. A misstep is a very apt term for the danger posed by the Venus man-trap. Like its namesake from ancient terror, the Venus flytrap, the Venus man-trap, Vinia malum, has large barbed leaves which are hinged through the center. These leaves can be 6 yards or more across, and react to pressure on their surface, quickly snapping shut and trapping anyone foolish enough to stray within reach. Even worse, the Venus man-trap does not just passively wait for prey, but its tendrils and leaves are able to extend forward many feet from the main body of the plant, lunging to ensnare their victims and dragging them in with immense strength. Once clamped in its vice-like grip, the plant secretes a potent mixture of digestive enzymes that quickly eat through the victim until only the bones remain. The jungle fighters of Catachan know that attempting to uproot the man-trap is virtually pointless, and the only option if they find themselves trapped by the foot is to use their blade to cut through the tough outer dermis of the leaf in the hope of freeing themselves. If they are swift and lucky enough, they can release the trapped limb before these enzymes can digest more than their clothing and the top few layers of skin. Of course, this relies on them being in a position to reach their blade in the first place. The man-trap is not the only plant able to propel itself in search of victims, and another common danger is not found underfoot, but hanging above in the canopy. The brain leaf, Vinia catachanus dominari, is a plant-like vine that uses other larger trees for support. Sometimes referred to as the grey weed for its coloration, it is also known as the slave vine for the insidious threat it poses to sentient organisms that stray too close to its overhanging tendrils. Each tendril is tipped with a cluster of large fleshy leaves which are able to propel themselves to an extent in a flapping motion while still attached to the main plant. The brain leaf is an example of something similar to biological emergence, where each leaf forms part of a greater Gestalt consciousness in the parent plant. The leaves appear harmless until they land on living animal tissue, but on the underside they sport barbed hooks that latch into the flesh of the poor creature that has strayed too close, making the leaf near impossible to remove. Once attached, the hooks then grow into tendrils that send out microscopic spindle fibers that bury themselves into the flesh of their victim, extending through the soft tissues until they make contact with the nervous system. Once there, these fibrous growths extend throughout the central nervous system, eventually reaching the brain and taking control of their victim, in a manner much like certain species of insect pathogenic cordyceps fungi. once found in the tropics of ancient Terra. The brain leaf swiftly overrides the victim's own survival instincts, dominating and subverting it to the will of the parent plant. Once this is complete, the leaf cluster detaches from the parent, while still remaining as an epiphytic parasite on the victim, who is left as a near mindless thrall, able to perform only the most basic of motor functions. However, if one was to attempt to remove the leaf, the thrall will spring into action, aggressively defending the parasite that will eventually cause the victim to waste away and use its body to proliferate its young. Even if the process of removal is successful, the severing of the plant's control over the victim causes massive trauma to the nervous system, and many die as a result, and those that do survive are left permanently damaged. There is some evidence that the brain leaf is not a true native of Catachan, as it has been found on other worlds, and it has been suggested it may be an evolutionary descendant of the tyrannid bioform, the cortex leech, with which it shares a number of distinct similarities. While the Venus mantrap and the brain leaf gain sustenance or protection from their unfortunate victims, there are other plants for which the infection of the host species is a vital stage of their life cycle, and their means of infecting said hosts are as varied as they are fascinating. One such well-known plant is the spiker, Spinia transformatic. Spiker plants can vary greatly in size, and the reason is tied to their method of reproduction. The spiker is a spherical plant covered in black needle-sharp spines. These plants tend to be found in patches of multiple individuals, and in navigating the dense jungle of Catachan, it is wise to give them a wide berth if at all possible. This is especially true, as while some of the flora of this green hell will react to contact with a living organism, the spiker does not need such close interaction. The spiker is highly sensitive to vibrations, such as those caused by a passing animal. These vibrations will trigger the plant's attack mechanism, causing the spiker to eject spines from its fleshy body in all directions at once. Should even a single projectile spine pierce the flesh of an unfortunate creature, it is usually a death sentence. The spines of the spiker are covered with an extremely potent mutagenic toxin, which on entering the victim's bloodstream begins to aggressively alter its DNA, causing rapid and extreme phenotype expression. The victim will begin to sprout spines of their own, as the fast-acting toxins rapidly overwhelm any biological defenses. Within 24 hours, the morphology of the host organism is changed beyond all recognition, becoming a new spiker plant, indistinguishable from the original plant that caused their demise, except for the size, depending on the body mass of the host. An old Catachan trick is to flush out an unfortunate creature and drive them into the range of the spikers, triggering the release of the spines and allowing the jungle fighter to move past unharmed. But even this is only a small window of opportunity, as the spiker rapidly regrows its deadly spines ready for the next volley. Another deadly organism that uses unfortunate human victims as reproductive hosts is the breathweed, Parasites respirae. It is not entirely clear if this species is a true plant or a fungi, but it has the appearance of a vine, commonly found growing on trees in the jungle. However, if disturbed, the vine disintegrates into a cloud of airborne spores. If even a single one of these spores is inhaled, the extreme reaction of the breathweed has achieved its purpose. The spore attaches to the tongue of the victim, causing an easily overlooked small blister that appears to heal rapidly. However, the spore has by then buried deep into the flesh of the tongue, where it starts to break down and digest the tissue, and use the nutrients for rapid cellular division. Over subsequent weeks, the breathweed entirely replaces the flesh of the host's tongue with its own rapidly dividing cells, while remaining indistinguishable from it. This would be bad enough, but having consumed the tongue, the breathweed starts to absorb all the nutrients that pass over it, while producing even more spores. The victim wastes away until their emaciated body finally succumbs to the release of death, where with their dying breath, the pseudo-tongue dissolves, releasing a final cloud of spores that will seed new vines to continue the deadly life cycle of the breathweed. And there we have it, my friends, a brief look at just a few of the deadly flora and fauna of Catachan. And believe me, we have barely scratched the surface in our journey through the jungle, and the denizens of possibly the most hostile death world in the Imperium. I hope you've enjoyed our trip together, and I've earned your subscription today. And I'll see you again in the near future, where there is only war.